When humans get angry, the universe trembles. The Kroan raiding fleet charged their weapons and pointed them towards Earth, unaware that their presence had been detected long before their arrival. Below, on the pale blue planet, a sleeping giant had awakened, rallied, and now lay in wait, angry and ready. On the bridge of the Kroan flagship, Silent Talon, Commander XYX studied the tactical display. The image of Earth and its moon hovered before him. Though this inferior species possessed crude technology by galactic standards, taking the planet would not be easy. Kroan intelligence had grossly underestimated human resistance, and now hundreds of stealth warships and orbital defense platforms surrounded Earth and Luna. XYX's mandibles clicked in irritation. No matter, the Kroan fleet outnumbered and outgunned the humans 3-1, and his soldiers were bred for conquest, stronger, faster, and more savage than these pink apes could ever hope to match in close-quarters combat. The order was given to advance, plasma cannons charged and ready. At 20,000 kilometers out, the Kroan fleet slowed and unfurled into attack formation. Yet something seemed amiss. The human warships had not moved from their positions guarding Earth and the Moon. They showed no sign of aggression or fear. Were they immobilized by terror in the face of the massive Kroan force? Perhaps they hoped to beg for mercy. No, thought XYX uneasily. Human communication had made it clear that surrender was not an option. They were planning something, but what? A trap? Some new secret super weapon? Alarm klaxons blared. Commander, multiple FTL signatures detected, shouted his sensor officer. XYX looked at his display in confusion and horror as hundreds more human vessels suddenly blinked into existence on all sides, totally encircling the Kroan. The ships were sleek and bristling with gunports, but they had not been there a moment before. A chilling realization dawned on XYX. The humans had mastered faster-than-light teleportation technology, and now the Kroan fleet was cut off from escape and surrounded. The hunter had become the prey. All ships ready main batteries, target the flagship and fire on my command, came the human admiral's orders over the communication channel. XYX looked on helplessly as thousands of railguns and plasma batteries swiveled to point directly at the heart of his fleet. Perhaps we should not have enraged the humans after all, XYX thought grimly as the human ships unleashed hell upon them. And so began the Kroan's brutal introduction to the human concept called payback. The opening salvo from the human fleet tore through the unprepared Kroan ships like tissue paper, destroying dozens of cruisers and frigates instantly. Klaxons wailed on the Silent Talon as explosions cascaded across the flagship's hull from direct railgun hits. XYX gripped his command chair as the bridge pitched and tossed under the withering bombardment. "Return fire," he bellowed. "Target their flagship and largest vessels first." Kroan plasma cannons and torpedoes streaked towards the massed human fleet, only to be intercepted by defensive laser grids and railgun point defense systems. Only a few scattered shots connected, melting armor plating but failing to penetrate the human heavy shielding. It soon became clear the Kroan were totally outmatched. XYX watched in dismay as one Kroan heavy cruiser after another blinked out of existence on his tactical display, shredded by the humans' overwhelming firepower. How had the humans built so many advanced warships right under the Kroan snouts? Their last intelligence reports showed the humans to be fractured and technologically inferior, yet they had somehow unlocked technologies thought to be decades away, even for the powerful Kroan scientific caste. The Silent Talon shuddered again as a barrage of missiles detonated against its shields. Cracks spiderwebbed across the bridge viewport. They couldn't take much more of this pounding. "All ships, focus fire on the human flagship," ordered XYX desperately. "We must." His words were cut off as a railgun slug punched straight through the bridge hull. Atmosphere vented in a split second, sucking XYX and his bridge crew out into the frozen void. The magnetic rounds continued punching through the cruiser's interior compartments, bursting fuel lines and munitions magazines as the Silent Talon erupted into a series of fiery detonations. On the human flagship Valiant, Admiral Harris watched grimly as escape pods and debris streamed away from the dying Kroan ships. Less than 5 minutes into the battle and the alien fleet was already coming apart at the seams. "This is almost too easy," he thought. "Shall we pursue and finish them off, Admiral?" his XO asked. "Negative. Let them run back to Croya with their tails between their legs, Harris replied. Our message today was clear: humanity will not tolerate unprovoked attacks on our worlds. As the last smoldering Crowan wrecks faded off his display, Harris opened a channel to Earth. Mission accomplished, he reported. The incursion has been repelled. Cheers erupted across all channels from the lunar bases and defense platforms. On Earth below, humanity celebrated their victory and marveled at the quantum leap in their technological prowess. The Crowan had poked a sleeping dragon and would not soon forget the consequences. After their crushing victory over the Crowan incursion, a mood of triumph and celebration swept across human-controlled space. News of the battle spread like wildfire, and billions watched rebroadcasts of the Crowan fleet being ripped to shreds. Humanity had faced its first true interstellar trial and passed with flying colors. However, in the corridors of power, there was a somber reckoning of the new reality humanity found itself in. They were no longer isolated and technologically inferior. Unlocking the quantum wormhole drive had catapulted them overnight into the big leagues, but also painted a target on their heads. Humanity needed to expand its defenses, and quickly. Construction soon commenced on more orbital shipyards, defensive platforms, and rapid manufacturing centers on Mars and the Moon. A new wave of wormhole-capable warships began rolling off the assembly lines, bristling with exotic metals and advanced weapons systems. Admiral Harris stood looking out the viewport of the new Orion-class dreadnought Dominion, one of the first of its kind. At 15 kilometers long, it boasted enough firepower to slag a small moon. He was to take command of the first long-range battle group tasked with patrolling and securing human colonies out to 50 light-years from Earth. Admiral, we've received an update from Croya, reported his XO, Commander Lewis. The aliens have increased their military presence around the storm zone bordering our space. Several battle fleets are moving to reinforce their outposts. Harris nodded grimly. The vast interstellar nebula storm known as the Tempest Cloud marked the current border between human and Crowan space. It had long been deemed impassable until the advent of the quantum drives. Skirmishes seemed inevitable. They are testing our resolve, Harris replied, probing to see if we've overextended ourselves after our recent technology leap. Have they made any aggressive moves? Not yet. Their ships have stayed on their side of the storm zone, no border violations. Then neither will we make the first move or show any weakness, said Harris. Dispatch a carrier group and 2 destroyer squadrons to patrol our side of the border. Priority mission is reconnaissance and intelligence gathering. Under no circumstances are they to cross the storm zone or take offensive action. Is that clear? Yes, sir, Lewis replied, heading off to relay the orders. Despite his even tone, Harris felt the weight of humanity's future resting on his shoulders. Millions of lives now depended on the long-range battle groups and orbital defenses to keep their colonies safe. It was a grave responsibility, but one he bore willingly. The Crowan may have numbers and experience, but humanity had innovation, grit, and righteous anger on their side. Harris silently vowed the Crowan would come to rue the day they'd crossed swords with mankind. The next weeks were tense, but no clashes occurred as both sides continued to build up forces on the border. Harris was uneasy with the Crowan's unusual restraint. Were they plotting something? The answer came during a high-level briefing at Fleet Command. We've detected concentrated ship movements within one of the larger Crowan colonies bordering the storm zone, reported the intelligence officer. Long-range imaging shows them assembling what looks like an invasion fleet near the planet's moon, over 200 capital ships so far and more arriving daily. Murmurs of alarm rippled through the briefing room. A hologram of the moon flickered to life, showing mile-long Crowan troop carriers and bristling battlecruisers gathered menacingly in orbit. That moon houses one of their major fleet academies and rallying points, rumbled Admiral Novak. It appears they are preparing for a major offensive. But amassing such a force will leave their central colonies weakened and exposed, said Admiral Locke, confusion evident on her face. They'd be incredibly vulnerable to counterattack. Harris nodded slowly as he studied the augmented reality display of the Crowan fleet, a plan crystallizing in his mind. Not if they mean to strike quick and hard at our core worlds before we have time to respond. The implications sank in among the gathered brass and government officials. Croyer was gambling everything on one knockout blow deep into human space. "How the hell do they plan to actually reach our central colony so quickly?" said Novak. "Even with quantum drives, no ship can cross the storm zone without being ripped apart." "The Orion sensor logs from the first battle may have the answer," said Harris gravely. "Our quantum emissions were stronger than anticipated, punching temporary holes through the storm zones. They must think they can use their own drives to follow those pathways straight to Earth and Luna." The room fell silent. If the Crowan fleet followed such a route, they could bypass all of humanity's outer defenses and strike at the heart of the Sol system itself. "We have to hit them now, before they can make their move," Locke urged. "Our ships are more advanced, but if they outnumber us 10-1, even we won't stand a chance in a direct engagement." "Agreed," Harris replied. "But rather than a frontal assault, I suggest we go for the throat. Our new dreadnoughts can destroy their academy and primary shipyards on that moon in a single coordinated strike. It'll cripple their ability to wage war in this sector for years." After some debate, the plan was approved, and preparations for the mission began immediately. Harris would lead the strike himself from the Dominion, with 2 other Orion-class dreadnoughts and a fleet of smaller ships in support. It would be the first time humanity had taken the fight deep into enemy territory on such a scale. Failure could mean losing the homeworld, but success might very well turn the tide of the war for good. The Dominion cruised silently through the deep black, its engines barely a hum as it emerged from the quantum wormhole into Crowan space. The fleet's stealth systems rendered them nearly invisible to Crowan sensors, but the slightest mistake could reveal their position and bring the wrath of the Crowan fleet down upon them. Harris ordered the fleet to halt just outside the moon's sensor range, where they could observe the massive Crowan armada assembling above the academy. "Weapons status?" Harris asked quietly, his gaze locked on the tactical display. "All batteries and torpedo launchers are hot and ready, sir," reported the gunnery officer. "We'll have a firing solution on their shipyards and academy within 30 seconds." Harris took a deep breath and steeled himself for what was about to come. They had one chance to strike hard and fast before the Crowan could organize a counterattack. "All ships, target their primary academy facility and prepare to fire on my mark," Harris ordered. He watched the targeting reticles blink into place over the academy and shipyards on the holographic display. 3, 2, 1, fire. A barrage of railgun slugs, plasma bolts, and torpedoes erupted from the fleet, streaking across the void towards the moon. Harris watched as the first impacts hit the academy, smashing through shields and armor plating before detonating deep within the facility. Secondary explosions rippled across the surface as munitions depots and fuel storage tanks ignited, sending massive fireballs into space. The shipyards were hit next, with railgun slugs tearing through the half-finished Crowan capital ships and reducing them to floating scrap. Within moments, the entire moon was ablaze, the once proud Crowan Fleet Academy reduced to a smoldering ruin. "Enemy fleet is reacting, Admiral," reported the XO. "They are moving to intercept, but it'll take them at least 15 minutes to reach us." "Good," Harris replied. "That gives us plenty of time to finish the job. All ships, continue bombardment and target any remaining defensive installations." The human fleet continued its relentless assault, pounding the moon and the few Crowan ships that had managed to scramble to its defense. The Crowan fleet's response was disorganized and hasty, with many of their ships still uncrewed or half-built in the shipyards. As the first wave of Crowan ships approached, they were met with a wall of railgun fire and plasma bolts, cutting them down before they could even get within range to return fire. Harris watched as the Crowan fleet fell into disarray, their commanders realizing too late that they had been outmaneuvered and outgunned. With the academy and shipyards destroyed, the Crowan fleet's morale shattered, and they began to retreat, leaving their wounded and damaged ships behind. "They are pulling back, Admiral," reported the XO. "Should we pursue?" "Negative," Harris replied. "Our mission was to cripple their war-making capability, and we've done that. Order the fleet to fall back to the wormhole and prepare for extraction." The human fleet disengaged from the battle, leaving the burning ruins of the Crowan Academy and shipyards behind. As they slipped back into the quantum wormhole, Harris allowed himself a small smile of satisfaction. They had struck a decisive blow against the Crowan, one that would leave them reeling for years to come. But the war was far from over, and Harris knew that the Crowan would not take this defeat lying down. The next phase of the war would be even more brutal, but for now, humanity had shown that they were not to be trifled with. The Crowan had underestimated humanity once, but they would not make that mistake again.